What is up, YouTube? It is Coach Colton here to bring you physique development tools, skills, and opinions that hopefully you can use for yourself to make some gains. Today, I'm wearing a blood donation shirt, and yes, in fact, you should donate blood to save some people's lives and probably improve your health, especially if you're using super supplements. Let's move on to the second video in our series, Dieting for Hypertrophy. In this video, we're going to talk about some very important details. So before we establish how to set macros up for hypertrophy-driven goals, we need to establish some patterns of eating, some healthy food choices prior to doing that. Eating the right foods is crucial for performance when it's relative to digestion, health, pumps, and performance. These things all impact directly your performance in the gym and your ability to grow. If you're not digesting your food, you probably aren't using it. If you're not able to use the carbohydrates that you're eating, you're probably not going to be able to convert those to energy as glycogen to produce force in the gym. You need to understand that certain foods are also going to contribute to your health, as well as some are going to be a detriment to your health. And a healthy individual is one that is going to build the most muscle. Hypertrophy requires a well-oiled, optimized machine of a human being that works on multiple systems within the human body. So ensuring that all those systems are online is going to enable us to build a proper amount of lean body mass. And so how I like to approach this part of creating people's diets is I really prefer the method of using macros, yes, but doing it in a different sense where we're only picking X amount of foods from an X category. And I'm going to show you how I do this and kind of break it down. It's going to be a little different for most of you, I'm sure, but I really encourage counting macros this way, as I've found it has been the most beneficial for my athletes and my individual growth as well. So what do we do? Protein sources. Well, we're really going to want to look for like lean nitrogen. Nitrogen is a word I use to refer to proteins. It's just very easy to say as opposed to like, oh, this protein source or this protein source. So lean nitrogen would just be a lean meat or protein source. Chicken breasts, white fish, turkey, shrimp, tilapia, cod, all those sorts of things, venison, egg whites, whey proteins, whey isolates, casein proteins, all sorts of crazy stuff is in there. But what I'm going to pick is use what I've listed on the PowerPoint for you guys, which is chicken breast, white fish, turkey, shrimp, venison, egg whites, and whey protein. Those are my protein sources. Then I have fatty nitrogen sources, or fat protein sources. These consist of usually certain red meats that are fattier, so things like bison can be a little bit more fatty than normal meats. Things like a New York strip are going to be much more fatty. So certain red meats have more fat, whereas like a bottom round or a top round doesn't really have any fat. In fact, it's almost as lean as a white meat would be. Salmon, sardines, mackerel, eggs, lamb, those are the foods I'm going to be choosing. These are really, I'm just taking what I eat in my diet and applying it to this PowerPoint to show you how I go about selecting these. So I select protein sources, and these are going to be interchangeable through my required protein for the day. So I can get my protein goal with any of these meats. Carbohydrate sources, we have like, I split it into high glycemic and low glycemic carbohydrate sources. Why? Well, there's a lot of reasons. One, carbohydrates from a high glycemic source are way more readily synthesized into glycogen, much more rapidly as well as compared to low glycemic sources. As well, if you're struggling to eat food, maybe it's the off season and you're really putting down the food, a high glycemic source of carbohydrates is going to be way easier to eat than a low glycemic source. That is just known because of the fibrous husk of those low glycemic courses. As well as when we're trying to promote those glycogen stores to be repleted after a workout, when we have that available GLUT4 translocation and sensitivity to us, it's really going to be preferential to eat something that is high in glycemic index to readily be changed into glycogen within the body. Now, my sources of choice are white rice. Cream of rice is my absolute favorite. White potatoes, some oats. So instant oats are high glycemic. They're much different in structure than a low glycemic oat, which would be like a steel or a rolled oat. Low fat bread, jams, and rice. So jams is just rice pasta. Jams is really just a really great way to get in carbohydrates easily. However, you do want to watch the fructose content on those, but generally you can put some jam on a piece of bread and add 200 calories without even really thinking about it. So it's an awesome way to do that. Low glycemic sources that I choose: couscous, which is a really great grain, quinoa, sweet potato, certain oats. So these would be like the steel cut oats, the rolled oats, the overnight oats, these all different kind of oats that are not the instant ones. Wild rice and wheat breads. These are going to be my preferential ones. I don't really eat the bread. I'm just kind of throwing it as there as an example. And then fat sources are really crucial here. Monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats are known to correlate with improved health, especially cardiovascular health. We really want to preferentiate these fat sources as they're going to provide us a lot of benefits, polyphenols, and good nutrients that's going to add to our performance as well, or instead of taking away from it. What has also been shown about these particular fat sources is that they don't get stored as fat readily as, say, a saturated fat would or a trans fat would. So you really want to focus on getting the bulk of your sources from these fat sources, polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fat sources. That's things like nuts, olives, olive oils, grapeseed oils, certain nut butters, avocados, chia seeds, pumpkin seeds. I really love Brazil nuts, just things like that, really nutritious foods. Olives themselves are a great source of mTOR activation, actually, in some recent literature I've read. So super great, tasty foods. These are also really good for adding in calories, right? Like if you're eating and you're so stuffed you can't eat anymore, adding in fats is really tasty for one, but it's also a really easy way to add in calories. Remember, fats are 9 calories per gram, so compared to the other two sources, they're doubled that, more than double that. So you can really rack up some easy calories with a fat source. Now, how do I count this? This is where it's going to get a little different for most of you who have been used to using MyFitnessPal and plugging in things, scanning barcodes and all that stuff. This is a little different. It's a little bit more advanced. That's why we're taking it out of the healthy eating video series and applying it to this hypertrophy series. This is what I do. If you have a different opinion, you do, and that's totally fine. You can do exactly what you want or what someone else is preaching, but from what I've done with coaches who are very infamous, myself and my clients, and what I've just seen as a broad spectrum, effective way of doing things is exactly this. So for protein sources, we are only counting the protein that's coming directly from whole proteins from the sources we've selected. So those 6 or 8 choices that you made are going to be the ones you'll be using directly for protein counting. So if you eat oats, the protein that's in those oats is not what we're going to be counting. It's not a whole protein, it's not a quality protein. And you could make the argument, well, these several amino acids that oats will have is going to be combined with the amino acids that you're eating from other sources, and which is true, but trust me, this is the way, and I hate the word trust me, but this is the way I've done it, this is the way many coaches do it, and I have seen it in practical application the best way possible. There's a lot of literature talking about whole proteins versus partial proteins versus plant proteins and which is best. That is my justification. If you're interested, just go look up whole proteins versus partial proteins total review. There's a lot of them out there, but look for the most recent ones and read through them, and you'll kind of see my justifications within those reviews. Now, carbohydrate sources is very much the same. We're only counting the carbohydrates from the sources that we've listed. So when I was talking about white rice or cream of rice or wheat or couscous, I'm only going to be counting the carbohydrates from those sources, not the fats that are included and not the proteins that are included. So if I need 50 grams of carbs, I know that's 60 grams of rice. If I need 50 grams of carbs, I know that's 60 grams of pasta. If I need 50 grams of carbs, I know that's roughly about 250 grams of potato. So it's very easy when you start counting it like this way. It becomes so simple because you're cutting out most of the noise when you're counting macros, and you're just focusing on one macronutrient from each source. Now, fat sources is a little different. In fat sources, yes, we're only going to include the fats from the sources that we're counting, so the extra nutrients that's within those avocados, you're not going to be counting that. You'll only be counting the fats or nut butters. But the only difference is when we're choosing those fatty nitrogen sources, like the lambs, like the red meats, the fish, those are going to be fats that are included in our fat totals for the amounts of macros we have for that specific day. So that is the only source in which there's actually 2 sources of it. Otherwise, you're just counting directly from those sources as you will. This ensures us a couple things. One, it gives us the ability to have quality nutrients from each group, right? If you're eating a bunch of red meat all day because you really enjoy red meat and your macros won't allow you for any more fat because it's very low at the moment, you're not going to be able to get these polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fats and polyphenols and phytonutrients from your other ingredients. So this allows us to ensure that we're getting the highest ingredients, the highest nutrient quality, in our foods that we're eating, as well as we're accounting for the differences, as I mentioned, in whole versus partial proteins. That's going to be really essential for growth and anabolism and mTOR signaling, having the highest leucine counts available for us, as well as it's easy to count. Seriously, like it is so easy to count when you do it this way. If you're only needing 50 grams of protein, I need 6 ounces of meat. You don't have to think about anything else. 6 ounces of meat, boom, done. Like that is it, right? You don't have to consider the carbohydrates that might be in that meat for whatever reason, the fats that are in that meat. 6 ounces of meat is going to be 50 grams of carbs, and then, or 50 grams of protein. Then I need 25 grams of carbs. I know that's 125 grams of potatoes. And then you just pick from the sources that you've selected, and you know, and there's no questioning it or anything, right? So it's a really easy way to count. This is the way I do it. Once again, if you have different opinions, you can follow your own advice or whoever is giving you advice, but this is what I have seen to be most effective. So you might be saying, what about fruits and veggies? You know, I'm not including them at all in this thing. Well, it's because I don't count them in carbohydrates like most macronutrient guides would. I count them as a separate ingredient. So what I do is I personally create a standardized serving. Now, this is a practical approach for me. I have no rhyme or reason to doing it like this, but I create a standardized serving of usually 100 calories, right? And so I know that 100 calories of vegetables is 320 grams of spinach, or it's 150 grams of asparagus, I think. Like it just varies. It's like 425 grams of cucumber. I know that, so I'm going to look at each of my meals and I'm going to add and divvy out X amount of fruits and vegetables with those calorie limits applied. So if I tell a client, hey, you have 200 calories in, which is a lot, 200 calories in vegetables for this day, split them out. And then I might advise like, hey, put 50 calories of vegetables here, 50 calories of vegetable here, 50 calories of vegetables here, whatever, so on. And same thing with fruits. You know, I'm going to say, hey, you got 100 calories of fruits for the day. You know, split up, like 100 calories of fruit is like 320 grams of strawberries, or it's like 2 kiwis. Like it's just very generic, easy to count across the board. So we place those where we will. You know, usually I place fruits between the post and pre-workout meal, and vegetables as far away from the workout as possible. The basic thing is that you're just getting the minimal fiber intake for your gender at that time. So males, it's typically 30 to 38 grams of fiber, and females, it's usually 20 to 28. I actually have a typo in there. It's 28. But that is generally what you're going to want to do most of the time, right? Some people need more, which is evident in your digestion, right? So you're just going to want to keep track of how you're digesting all the food you're eating and your bowel movements. And if they're off, try playing with fiber a little bit. Now, fiber is needed for bowel movements, but it's also used to kind of expel excess cholesterol from the bile and bring it through the digestive tract. So it is really essential, and we want to make sure we're hitting at least those baselines. I'm not separating it from our macros to say that it's not important. I'm separating it because it's just easier to count. And then I can make sure, once again, instead of counting fibrous carbohydrates which aren't going to synthesize into glycogen, I can count the fiber extrinsic outside of the actual diet model that we're really applying our performance to, right? So consider the macronutrients as like the performing molecules, and these is like the health molecules that are added on later. So that's generally how I do it. Now, once again, with fiber, it's a good and a bad thing. The concept of hormesis really applies here. Too much is awful. I'm sure many of you have tried too much fiber and know what that feels like, but too little is also awful. So you need just the right amount, and that just the right amount for everyone. That's what hormesis is, like the level that's perfect for your body. People have hormesis levels as it relates to working out, water, carbohydrates, fats, all that sort of stuff. But yours for fiber is very different from mine for fiber. So you kind of have to piece that together as you're going through, just by adding and subtracting fiber via this calorie map that I kind of create. And really that's it. So you pick these very simple basic categories of food. You have 6 to 8 foods in each: proteins, carbs, and fats. And then you have some vegetables and a rough idea of which ones you like that you can place into caloric limits for yourself and place around your diet. Now, I really encourage getting a full range of colors in your vegetables, so go wild with this, but just make sure that as many vegetables as you're putting in per meal, you're keeping it within that calorie range. That's the only thing I'm concerned about. In the next video, we're really going to learn about how to count macros now, and more specifically how much of what, and how that might be enhancing or detriment to your performance in the gym and hypertrophy overall. So thank you guys for sticking along this long. I hope the video was awesome. I don't know if it was or not. It probably was lame. If it was, I'm sorry. It's like, again, it's probably the red hair. I didn't even do my hair today, so I don't know. It could be. But if you did like it, leave a dislike, because I need to know, quite frankly. So we will see you in the next video, guys. Deuces.